Hey everyone, this week we're going to be reviewing this pen, which is the Leonardo MZ Grande Stromboli. It's quite the name, and it's quite the pen. I personally took a little while to hop on the Leonardo train myself. Around early 2018 I saw some Instagram pictures floating around about this new brand that was on the scene called Leonardo, and I saw it pop up in a few web stores and was very tempted because they looked really beautiful and they had a very tempting price. But I decided not to go for it at that moment and wait until I could try them out in person. And I eventually did, and that's another review for another time. But I really enjoyed the experience that I had with the first Leonardo that I got, and I knew that if there were other ones that really appealed to me, I would not hesitate as much in getting them the next time. And that's where this pen comes in, because this is the second Leonardo that I have, 2 of 2 at this point, and it is a collaboration between Leonardo and Jonathan Brooks, who is an American pen blank manufacturer. He made the material, which is very beautiful, as you will see in the close-ups, and it was made in the summer of 2020. It was released, and it sold out almost immediately. I was very lucky that I did not hesitate to pick this one up. And I have been using it for, about 6 or 7 months now, and considering that they just released a version very similar to this, I think it would be about high time that I provide my thoughts on this pen. So it's definitely in the name. The Momento Zero Grande is quite large. Despite that, though, it still has a number 6 nib, which I find maybe looks a little small on the pen, but it works perfectly fine. It's a 14 karat gold nib. It's a medium nib, at least the one that I have, and it's made by Bock, which is a German nib manufacturer, one of the 2 main ones. And it is a relatively flexible nib in terms of just regular gold nibs. Even though it's not exactly a flex nib, it's still a tremendously pleasant writing experience, as we'll get into. It's also an incredibly smooth nib. It is a medium nib, so it's not super fine or anything, but for what it is, it's a very well-tuned nib, and it works perfectly with the ebonite feed. Most like standard Jova or Bock nibs that you get are just in tandem with a plastic feed, but Leonardo, I believe, manufactures these ebonite feeds themselves, and it works great in this pen. The flow is perfect. It's wet, but not so much to be a problem, and I think personally is a tremendous nib and feed combination. Frankly, one of the best writers that I have in my entire collection. Now, the body itself, as I stated before, it's a pretty large pen. It's up there, as you'll see in the size comparison, with other relatively large pens, although it is quite light. I believe the piston filler is made of metal. However, I don't think it contributes too much to the weight because it's still a relatively light pen. The body itself is the widest right where it screws onto the cap and then tapers down to the piston filling knob. And then what I think is very unique about Leonardo's is that grip section. It's a pretty unconventional shape, but I find it actually works very well with how you place your fingers, because your fingers kind of sit on that little bump that's right there and allow you to get a nice good grip on there. And yeah, as I mentioned before, it is a piston filler, which is pretty great, especially for how expensive the pen is. It's not really something that's needed, but it's just a nice little added bonus. And it works really well. It's very sturdy. I haven't had any problems with it. It's quite smooth, and it has a little ratcheting, so you actually feel it like a little soft clicking as you're screwing and unscrewing it. It also has this nice looking little roller clip right here, which is functional enough, although I don't really think anyone would be putting a pen like this in their shirt pocket. It also looks very nice. It's one of those traditional Italian roller style clips, and just a nice accent to the entire look of the pen. For the rest of the trim, you can see 3 little cap rings right here, which I think provides a nice little accent, and another trim ring where the body is, and one at the end where the piston filler connects with the body. As for the aesthetics of the pen, you can see, as you saw before, there's that nib imprint right there. Relatively subtle, but in a good way. Just says Leonardo Italy on there, and then 14 karat 585 M. And then, as I stated in the intro, the material of this pen is made by Jonathan Brooks. It's his primary manipulation material, and this is the Stromboli. The other version of this release was the Vesuvio, which was more red, and the Stromboli is meant to be more green. And it's definitely a unique material. I think it's really amazing looking. It's definitely, I think, probably helpful to see it in person before you get it, but the fact that these went so quickly means there was really no chance. And I think they all look great, but in different ways. Personally, I'm quite happy with the design I got, and it's definitely a color explosion, but in a good way, and I think it makes for a really, really nice looking pen. In terms of the build quality, though, I think this pen and Leonardo's in general are really almost unsurpassed. They're tremendously sturdy. They are really, you can feel that there's a lot of quality and love put into them. It's really, I think, one of the best, like, has the highest quality build of almost any of the pens that I have. It's polished extraordinarily carefully, or extraordinarily thoroughly, and everything about it just screams quality. I think Leonardo is really impressive in that area, and of course, while the looks of their pens are great, I think they deserve more appreciation just for how well built they are as well. Okay, so in terms of the use cases, like, what is this pen built for? It really caters towards like the hobbyist who just likes to write at home. I think it's perfect for snail mail because the size of the pen makes it really nice for long writing sessions. It's not super heavy, and while it is a great, like, ceremonial, fancy looking pen, it also just serves perfectly as an everyday writer at home. I think it excels in both those kinds of areas. So is it fun to use? Yes, absolutely. The beautiful material just adds on to that, but it's a great pen to use. It really is. I don't really know how to put it into words, but when you pick up the pen, you realize, like, this is a good pen. And personally, I think the grip section works great for me. I can understand some people with a non-traditional grip, it might not work for them, but I really enjoy the grip. I think it does a much better job as a grip section than your traditional, like, straight or concave traditional style grip sections. So is it practical to use? Well, it depends on what you're looking for. Personally, it's incredibly practical for me because I don't really go around and do my writing. I'm just in my room, either doing personal writing, snail mail, or class notes. And for either of those things, it's a great pen. And I have to say that I'm really glad that they actually put a piston filler in this pen, because the first Momento MZ Grande models were a sort of large capture converter, which is nice, but it is really cool to have that piston filler in there just for that added ink capacity and just the cool functionality as well. And then the final question, really the most important one, does it write well? Yes, absolutely. I really don't know many different ways to say it, except just that it's one of the best writers in my collection, and hopefully you'll see that in the writing sample as well. Okay, so here we have a little size comparison. This is the Leonardo next to an Esterbrook J, next to an Aurora Optima, and a Conklin Duraflex Elements. So as you can see, it's definitely a big pen. It's not unusable or unwieldy, but it's not something like a smaller vintage pen like an Esterbrook or a small modern pen like an Optima. And uncapped, you can definitely see it is still the biggest pen of the three. So, now let's get a good close-up of that material for you. Alright, I turned my light on so you can hopefully see the colors a little better, because in the light is where these colors really pop and where this pen really shines. You can see all that multicolored undulating swirls, really unique to this material, really not something you'll find in many other materials. Okay, this is the Leonardo MZ Italiana. Momento MZ Grande Stromboli. And the ink is a simple one. Parker Quink Blue Black. I was using this for my statistics notes the other day that I needed to submit, so I wanted to use a somewhat professional looking ink. But as you can see, it's got great flow. Sometimes it does run dry on me after I've let it sit for a while, but that's only when I don't really close the cap all the way, and I just have a tendency of doing that. So I don't really think of it as a huge knock towards the pen, but yeah, as you can see, this is definitely, it's really just effortless writing. Like, if you just hold the pen at the back, it just writes, it's perfectly tuned. It's very smooth. I don't know if the writing sounds are picking up on the mic at all, but it's absolutely a pleasure to use. So here we have the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. And I talked about that gold nib. You can see it's got a little bounce to it. It's not a nail like some gold nibs, but it's also not a flex nib. It's just got a little bit of play, a little bit of character to it, which I think just adds to that really positive writing experience that it gives. So yeah, that's how this pen writes. So, final thoughts. As you saw, it writes great, and really in general, I think this is definitely one of the gems of my collection. I'm very glad to pick it up while it was still available, and they just released a second batch of these pens recently, which is pretty much the same, except there are two wider cap bands right here instead of the three narrow ones. So I would highly recommend the pen. I think it's not a cheap pen. It's definitely a higher end pen, even for the Leonardo line, but I think it is worth it if you're looking for a pen that's both like Instagram friendly, it's very visually appealing, but also a fabulous writer as well. So yeah, there's really not much more to say about the pen. I think it's really awesome, and I would highly recommend it to pretty much anyone that enjoys, really nice looking pens, good, well-tuned gold nibs, piston fillers. Yeah. And if you really enjoyed my thoughts on this pen, feel free to leave a like or subscribe if you're so inclined, because I will continue to try and keep doing videos like these in the future. YouTube, their statistics keep badgering me about the fact that only a small percentage, let's see if I can put it like right there, only a small percentage of the people that actually watch are subscribed. So if you subscribe, maybe they'll shut up about that. And yeah, thank you very much for watching. I hope you have a great day. Bye.